Welcome to London Property Digest, your essential 10-minute audio recap for staying informed on London's property market. We've got some interesting trends to unpack today. Even with high interest rates, property prices are staying strong. So what's the deal?
Well, it's fascinating. There's this kind of tug of war happening in the market right now. On the one hand, we've got these affordability concerns with mortgage rates being so high. The Bank of England's base rate is sitting at 4.75%. That's like a near 15-year high, which definitely has an impact on, how much people can borrow.
Yeah, right. Because those higher rates mean monthly payments are bigger. You'd think that would push prices down, but
But then on the other hand, you've got this persistent issue of demand outstripping supply. I mean, think about it. The average UK house price right now is 286,144 price. That's just 1% below the peak that we saw in the summer of 2022. And they even rose, year on year by 3.7% in November 2024.
so even with mortgages being more expensive, people are still finding ways to buy. What's fueling that?
Well, a few things. The low unemployment rate and recent wage growth are definitely helping. And then you've got, many first-time buyers are getting creative. They're tapping into family support or inheritance to get that initial deposit.
That makes sense. And it's not just first-timers, right? People who bought years ago have benefited from those rising prices, so they've got equity they could use to move up.
Yeah.
It's like this whole chain reaction going on.
Exactly. That built-up equity gives existing homeowners more financial flexibility. Even with the higher rates, they're not as squeezed as someone starting fresh.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, so we've got these two opposing forces, affordability concerns versus this really strong demand. So where does that leave us looking ahead? What's the prediction for UK house prices over the next 5 years?
The overall outlook is actually pretty positive. Most experts are predicting a gradual rise in house prices over the next 5 years. Not as dramatic as what we've seen in the past, but growth nonetheless.
So continued growth, but at a more sustainable pace.
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus. Of course, factors like employment levels, wage growth, and those all-important interest rates will all play a role, but the general feeling is one of cautious optimism.
Which makes sense, given everything we've just been talking about.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember, the UK property market is a pretty broad term.
Oh, you're absolutely right. It's not one giant uniform thing. It's actually made up of hundreds of micro-markets, each with its own quirks. You could have a street in one town that's booming, while another one just a few miles away is completely flatlining.
So even though the national picture gives us a good overview, what's happening in specific areas can be completely different.
Precisely. Local factors like transport links, school catchments, even things like access to green spaces can massively impact prices in a particular area. That's why it's so important to do your research and really understand the specific dynamics of the area you're interested in. Don't just rely on those national averages.
That's a fantastic point. It's like saying the average temperature of the Earth is comfortable, but you wouldn't wear shorts in the Arctic.
Exactly. You've got to look at the microclimate, so to speak. The best time to buy really depends on your circumstances and the specific area you're looking at.
So understanding those market trends is helpful, but it's not the be-all and end-all. There are other more personal factors to consider too, like are you ready to settle down, start a family, or simply just want to change the scenery?
Absolutely. Buying a home is a big decision, one of the biggest most people will ever make. You've got to approach it with a clear head, realistically understanding your own needs and priorities.
So while keeping an eye on the market is important, it's also crucial to listen to your gut and make sure you're ready for this adventure.
Yeah, it really is about finding the right fit for you, both in terms of the property itself, but also your life stage,
Yeah.
And speaking of finding the right fit, let's talk about some things you should be considering if you're thinking about buying in this market.
Okay, sounds good. But with everything we've been talking about, it can feel a bit overwhelming. Where do you even begin?
Well, the first thing is to really take a cold, hard look at your finances. What can you realistically afford, especially with these interest rates we've been discussing? It's crucial to factor in that rates can fluctuate. Make sure you're comfortable with those monthly payments, even if rates go up in the future.
So it's not just about getting approved for a mortgage. It's about making sure those payments are sustainable for the long haul.
Exactly. Don't overstretch yourself. Just to get on that property ladder, it's much wiser to be a bit cautious and wait until you're in a stronger financial position.
That's such a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of finding your dream home.
Right.
And end up feeling house poor down the line.
Absolutely. Once you have a firm grasp of your budget, you can start narrowing down your search to areas that align with your criteria.
And this is where those micro markets we talked about earlier come into play, right?
Precisely. Take the time to research different neighborhoods. Look at things like transport links. How easy is it to get around? What are the schools like? Are there good amenities nearby? Think about what's important to you. What kind of lifestyle you're looking for.
Yeah, it's not just about chasing the lowest price, but finding the right fit for your life.
You got it. The cheapest property might not be the best value in the long run. If it's in an area that doesn't work for your needs or has weak growth potential.
That makes so much sense. You might save some money up front, but could end up regretting it later on if you're not happy with the location.
Exactly. And remember, this is where a good local estate agent can be invaluable. They have such a deep understanding of the market and can offer insights and advice specific to those areas you're interested in.
It's like having a guide to help navigate those micro markets, someone who can help you avoid potential pitfalls.
Precisely. A good agent can also assist with things like negotiating offers, explaining the legal process, and generally making the whole buying experience a lot smoother.
So we've covered affordability research and finding the right location. What other tips do you have for navigating the market right now?
Well, it's important to be realistic about your expectations. In a competitive market, your first offer might not be accepted. It happens. Don't be discouraged. Stay patient and keep looking.
So it's all about perseverance and not giving up on your dream, even if it takes a little longer than expected.
Exactly. And be prepared to compromise. You might not find a property that ticks every single box on your wish list, you know? Be flexible and open to considering properties that might need a bit of work or aren't exactly what you initially envisioned.
It's about looking at the potential, seeing the bigger picture, right?
Exactly. Sometimes a little imagination and a bit of DIY can transform a property into your perfect home. And remember, you can always make changes and updates as time goes on.
That's such a great point. It's about focusing on that long-term vision and not getting hung up on minor details. That can be changed.
And finally, don't be afraid to walk away from a deal. If you're not 100% comfortable, it's better to miss out on a property than to rush into a purchase that you later regret.
So trust your instincts.
Yes.
And don't let anyone pressure you into a decision that doesn't feel right.
Absolutely. Buying a home is a major investment, both financially and emotionally. It's so crucial to approach it with a level head and a clear understanding of your needs and priorities.
You've given us so much to think about today. It all comes down to being informed, being realistic, and being patient.
And remember, even though the market can be a little unpredictable, there are still plenty of opportunities out there for those who are prepared to do their research and still the course, especially in a dynamic city like London.
Speaking of London, let's shift our focus to what's happening in the capital right now. Yeah, London's always a bit of a unique market, isn't it? I'm really curious to hear what's happening there.
It absolutely is. London's a global city with its own energy
Yeah.
and its own unique market dynamics. But a lot of those trends we've been talking about nationally, they're playing out in London as well. Affordability is still a major concern. And in many areas, demand continues to outpace supply.
So even with those higher interest rates, we talked about London property is still holding its value.
Yes, in many areas it is. What's interesting is that we're seeing particularly strong demand. In some of the outer London boroughs, prices tend to be a bit more accessible there, and there's often more space, which is attractive to families.
That makes sense. People looking for a bit more breathing room, especially after the pandemic.
Yeah.
And if they can get that at a slightly later price point in those outer boroughs, well, why not?
Exactly. And those outer boroughs are also benefiting from improvements in transport links. So commuting into central London is much easier and quicker these days.
So it's a combination of affordability, lifestyle factors,
Yeah.
and convenience, driving demand in those areas. It sounds like a bit of a sweet spot for buyers right now.
It really does seem that way. And it's not just families driving this trend either. We're also seeing young professionals and first-time buyers looking further afield for their first homes.
So those micro markets we talked about, they're shifting, with some areas becoming more desirable. As affordability becomes a bigger factor, it's like the map of London is being redrawn in a way.
That's a great way to put it. And it highlights why it's so crucial to stay informed and keep your finger on the pulse of the market. What's hot today might not be so desirable tomorrow.
It's like a game of chess, constantly trying to anticipate the next move.
Yes, but don't let that intimidate you. With the right information and a little strategic thinking, you can definitely make moves that will benefit you in the long run.
Okay, so for all our listeners out there thinking about taking the plunge in London, what are the key takeaways you want them to remember?
Well, first and foremost, don't panic. The market is always in flux, always evolving. Even with the challenges we've discussed, there are still opportunities out there.
So stay calm, do your research,
Yeah.
and don't rush into any decisions
Yeah.
you might regret later.
Exactly. Second, remember that location is key. Don't just fixate on the price tag. Think about the lifestyle you want and the amenities that are important to you. And don't be afraid to explore areas a bit outside your initial comfort zone. You might be surprised at what you find.
Sometimes the best opportunities are tucked away in unexpected places, just waiting to be discovered.
That's a great way to put it. And finally, don't underestimate the value of professional advice. A good estate agent can be an invaluable asset, offering local market knowledge, negotiation skills, and guidance throughout the entire buying process.
It's like having a trusted advisor by your side, helping you navigate the complexities of the market and making those informed decisions.
Precisely. So even though navigating the London property market can seem daunting at times, remember that with the right information and a bit of planning, you can absolutely achieve your property goals.
Absolutely. This has been such a fantastic overview. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
It's my pleasure. It's always a good time to talk about property.
And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the London property market. We hope you found it informative and, dare I say, exciting. Remember, knowledge is power when it comes to making smart property decisions.
And don't forget to subscribe to London Property Digest for the latest updates on the London property market.